over the mindset of how do we live as well as we possibly can, raise our quality of life, but do it in a way that allows future generations to do the same on a finite planet.
Absolutely.
That's it, right? That's the view. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
It's a good vision.
What's fascinating about SpaceX engineers, so I started with two co-founders, Wada and Nathan, is that nothing gets over-engineered, right? Everything is simplified down to its most elemental level and do it as cheaply as possible. We're in a new era in terms of climate action that is underway, but underrepresented in the media landscape. People don't know. I think that's a massive opportunity. I think the way that you sell sustainability is you don't talk about sustainability ever.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today we have a very special guest, Josh Dorfman, a serial climate entrepreneur and media visionary reshaping how we talk about clean tech. One of my favorite subjects, from founding a company that scored a massive 10 million panel deal with D.R. Horton to launching Supercool, his storytelling platform on the front lines of climate innovation. Josh is here to shift the climate conversation from doom to practical solutions, which is what I'm all about, right? So what, now what? Josh, thank you so much for being here, first of all.
Avetis, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Absolutely. And Josh, one of my favorite things is during our conversation, you made it really simple. Sometimes when you talk about climate change, it's so damn complicated and you don't know what to believe, what's an exaggeration, what's real. More importantly, it's a lot of complaining and whining and doom's tales like we talked about, but I'm more of a doer. I want to know what the hell can we do about it and what is the actual problem. So that's why I really enjoyed chatting with you, why I wanted you on the show. So let's jump in, brother. How did you even get into this world? Why do you care and how did you get in?
Yeah, thank you for that. I got in accidentally, which seems to be, everyone has a different path to sustainability. Mine goes back 30 years to Nanjing, China. I was there about a year after college thinking, you know what, this China-US relationship I know is going to be important for the 21st century. It just, through reading, just studies, felt like I needed to go get there. I've always wanted to be like where the action is. And at that time I was thinking diplomacy, maybe CIA, go to China, something cool will happen. So I was teaching English on a university, which was teaching grad students, really fascinating. And I got a part-time job working in a bicycle lock factory for an American company called Kryptonite that at the time had like the strongest bike lock in the world. And so I get this job in this factory. I end up going to work for Kryptonite full time. We open more factories. There's 1 billion people at that time riding bicycles in China. I'm 23, 24, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to retire in like 5 years. I'm going to sell into this market. This is going to be amazing. And we opened a factory in southern China. It was our third. I was traveling with the Chinese guy who owned the factory. We were going to celebrate in this restaurant where you consummate the deal in like snake blood and like grain alcohol. It was awesome. It was, especially when you're like, that age, you're like, oh my God, this is
incredible.
Being in a fraternity has prepared me for life more than anything else,
Mm-hmm.
But before we go in, he says, Josh, look, my Mercedes is the biggest Mercedes in the parking lot. And his chest swelled up with pride. And here we are in communist China, 1997 now. And I thought, wow, you guys want exactly what we want. More, bigger, higher quality of life. But there's 1 billion people here. They're all riding bikes, mostly. But no one wants a bike. Everybody wants a car. I don't know anything about global warming. I don't know anything about any of this stuff. But how's this going to work? What's the future going to look like? And I felt like I'd seen the future. I'd had this glimpse into what was coming and I couldn't shake it. Went back to the States, got an MBA, went through the .com thing, did a whole bunch of other things before I made the leap into sustainability. But that insight never left. And ultimately 6 years later, it led me to start a career building sustainable companies because I felt like, you know what, I have to do something.
It's, a lot of these older countries and older cities do not have the infrastructure to support the growth in humanity or what comes. I don't know if you've ever been to a little city called Yerevan, Armenia. It's a small European country with this incredible little city. But the city was created with infrastructure that did not count for 1 million cars. because people back then didn't have cars. Every 5 homes had 1 car. Now every home has 1 to 2 to 3 cars, and that city is too damn small. So now you got pollution problems. You got all kinds of issues. So it wasn't figured out in time. Sounds like China has dealt with, was about to deal with, or is still dealing with the similar issue. Right? These countries aren't created, unless the United States with these massive roads and all this flat land, they're rarely created for the growth, right? That the changes that happen in our lives.
I think that's absolutely right. I think China, as we know, is the outlier. China today, as it turns out, is the biggest automobile market in the world. Wow. And the biggest by far electric car market in the world. So there was a plan, right? Or there was this. What was interesting about that experience and is, what China will do, and I think, I don't know Armenia, but what communist countries will do, right? Or authoritarian countries will do is they'll be like, hey, there's a road going here. Oh, your house is there? So sorry. Yeah. But here's where the highway's going. So what you've seen there, I mean, fast forward 25, 30 years is it's in many respects, it's a modern miracle. If you think about the amount of people who've been lifted out of poverty, right? Oh, yeah. Who've just, right. I mean, it's amazing, but it's, but yeah, I think when you think about the whole world developing and what that means, just from more consumption, more carbon emissions, et cetera, my whole view has always been, how do I work on ventures, start ventures, find stories to tell about other ventures that over the mindset of how do we live as well as we possibly can, raise our quality of life, but do it in a way that allows future generations to do the same on a finite planet.
Absolutely.
That's it, right? That's the view. That's what we're trying to accomplish in
mind. It's a good vision. Good vision. By the way, Josh, China has the capacity to create 85% of the automobiles in the world. So just that this is how they do it, right? So let's talk about how you founded Planted, right? Because I think you founded it with a few SpaceX engineers, and you guys built a vertically integrated clean tech supply chain. How did that idea come about? I know where it started; it's clear now, but where did that come about, and what did you do with it?
So in 2018, I was on to my second modern design sustainable furniture company. I was really excited about this idea of manufacturing in the US, beautiful design, using eco-friendly materials, trying to hit an attainable price point, going with a direct to consumer model. And we built this really cool company. It was called Simbly, simple to assembly. It was kind of IKEA style, but higher grade. And the pandemic hit. Of course, that was really good for furniture companies initially. You could sell more desks. People were setting up home offices. But eventually we just had to shut our factory down, and we couldn't develop new product, and I couldn't get material. And the more I couldn't get material, and when I could, the quality was going down, price was going up of this plywood, high grade from a responsibly harvested wood I just thought, is that really doing any good? I mean, we're still cutting down trees to make this furniture. Here I am, this sustainability guy. I think we can do better. I kept thinking about materials. And in that moment, I was introduced to another entrepreneur who'd moved to North Carolina where I was running this factory. And someone said, you guys should talk. So I get on the phone with this guy, Wada, and he says, wow, you're building this cool company. It's going to be great. I was like, no, man, I don't really think so. These materials are cutting down trees. I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, what would you do different? And I was like, maybe use something like hemp, something that seems more renewable, grows faster, has a better story. And he was like, oh, that's so interesting. I've got 6 bags of hemp in my garage. And I was like, well, who are you, right? Who are you? And he's like, I just moved to Raleigh, Durham. I'd spent 8 years in LA. I was in charge of the life support systems, keeping astronauts alive on the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft.
Wow.
And I was like, wait. And you just moved to what? What do you? So we have this conversation. I'm talking about renewable materials. SpaceX folks, Elon back then was already thinking about carbon removal. Back then, it's only 4 years ago. How do we pull carbon from the atmosphere? We put these two ideas together and we said, well, what if we could identify a material, some biomass that could grow much faster than trees, right? Trees are known, they absorb carbon dioxide. We absorb more carbon dioxide much faster, but that whatever we're going to grow has to have structure to it, integrity that we can turn into something useful and durable. Let's go replace trees. Well, where do trees go? Trees go into homes in America. They're turned into lumber or into engineered materials like plywood in a factory. Can we replace that with something better and build a business around it? And by doing that, can we pull carbon from the atmosphere and lock it away, sequester it in the walls and floors and roofs of our homes? Wouldn't that be awesome? Well, that's what Planted does.
Wow. What were some of the most pivotal challenges in commercializing this type of innovation? That's the key, right? Because once you commercialize it, you can scale it. Otherwise, it's just another good idea.
Oh, 100%. I mean, as you know, there's challenges at every stage, right? Mm-hmm. So we had to say, first of all, is hemp the right thing? We actually went and investigated hemp. We did this whole agricultural research and development exploration, and ultimately decided, that hemp isn't the right material to the right feedstock. We landed on a grass, kind of like bamboo, grows very fast. We found it, identified it. The North Carolina Department of Agriculture had experimented with it. And we said, yes, that's it. It's going to work. Now, the only challenge is there's no supply chain, right? You can't call anyone up and be like, hey, we'll take 10,000 tons of like this grass. Like no one's growing it. So then we have to say, okay, this comes back to vertical integration. We need to set up a tissue culture lab. We need to figure out from the very beginning, how do we nurture this plant? And now we built a commercial tissue culture lab. Now we have to have commercial greenhouse operations. Now we have to have these plants ready to be able to deliver to commercial farmers and convince commercial farmers that this is a really good thing for them to grow. And you set all of that up, right? All of that's challenge. And then you have the challenge on the factory side. Okay, we want to not give this carbon back that we're working so hard to pull down out of the atmosphere in the first place. That means we have to design a production technology that's going to take this grass, right, and turn it into a material to sell to a builder with no smokestack on this building, entirely electric, right? So that we're not giving the carbon back. Never invented before. We've got to go invent that, scale it up. So, and then we have to commercialize, right? And so the commercialization for a company like this comes with first of its kind technology, comes during that entire process. And so for a company like D.R. Horton, who's our first major customer, they're in there with us pretty early in the process, and they're getting buy-in, and they're seeing how we operate and gaining a confidence level and a trust level that enables us to commercialize and bring this to market with them, and hopefully down the road with some other large companies as well. But gaining that confidence is about them seeing, it's not the best kind of metaphor, but it's like, you got to see how the sausage is made, right? You got to actually see, like, how do you guys think? And I'll just say one other thing about that. What's fascinating about SpaceX engineers, so I started with two co-founders, Wada and Nathan, is that nothing gets over-engineered, right? Everything is simplified down to its most elemental level and do it as cheaply as possible. Well, of course, investors are going to love that. So we take this prototype space in Durham, North Carolina, pretty much like the worst part of Durham. You wouldn't go there after night by yourself because it's dirt cheap. And we're in the back of this crummy industrial park. And we're bringing in these investors, and we're bringing, folks from D.R. Horton, and trying to raise a seed round and Series A. And when I get there for the first time and I see what Wada has done, I mean, you need to take grass or hemp, whatever, you need to slice it, put a little resin on it, mix it, right, and then press it. That's kind of the whole thing. He bought a pickle barrel, like a used, 50-gallon black pickle barrel. And he bought a used treadmill off of Craigslist for about $150. And he took that pickle barrel and he bolted it onto the treadmill. And you put the grass in, or you put the hemp in, a little bit of resin, run it on fat burn, and there's your mixer, right? Oh. And so when you have people from large public companies or investors or venture capitalists showing up, and they're like, okay, these rocket science engineers, and they see that, at first there's dissonance, and then their eyes light up, right? Because they're like, oh my God, yeah, I'm going to give you guys my cash because you're going to be incredible stewards of my capital, right?
Yes.
And very, very powerful, very effective.
Soon I will have their former CIO on the show, Elon Musk's first CIO. Very interesting guy. Learned a lot about Elon just from stories from him. So look out for that. What was the idea? Was the idea that instead of cutting down trees for paper, this was going to be the solution? We didn't quite get there.
Yeah. So, when we initially had this exploratory call, so me and Wada, we have this call. Within 20 minutes, we're like, hey, I think we should go just shut our little companies, go after this big materials play. The idea was, okay, trees, yeah, you're cutting down trees, you're turning them into, 2x4s for walls. You're turning them into, structural boards, right, that you're nailing to the 2x4s. And so we didn't know what we were going to do. We started talking to builders, and we started talking to like green builders, right? The ones who build the most environmentally friendly homes. I mean, that's clearly like the market initially we thought that we might be going after. Said, hey, like, we think we're going to make something out of hemp. Of course, they like that. Everyone knows that has an idea that hemp's better for the planet. We don't know what to make. What should we? And we're going to build a factory. We can make anything engineered, right? So if you take a 2x4 and you put it in a home, that's not an engineered product, right? You're basically like slicing up the tree. You get a 2x4. There are engineered versions, but there's no engineering there. If you get plywood, or the thing that replaced plywood called oriented strand board, which is like a chipped board, it's just basically cheaper to make, but still structural. You can build a house out of it. That's what we're replacing, right? So home builders said to us, well, this thing oriented strand board, which has largely replaced plywood, that's what you nail to the 2x4s to form your house. Like that's the predominant material in a house that's engineered. So we said, great, we're going to make that. What's wrong with it? And they said, well, if it gets wet, if there's moisture, that's a big problem, right? Because it starts to swell or lose its interiors. Great. We're going to make something that's going to be moisture resistant, hopefully have some fire retardation properties, but we're going to make a better product. It's out of grass instead of trees. And that's what we were trying to do. So in our minds, from an environmental standpoint or a climate standpoint, it was like, we're building a carbon removal machine. We're going to pull down carbon from the atmosphere, right? But to do that at scale, we have to have something to sell, right? That like lets the wheel continue to go round and round. Let's go after the biggest material market in home building, which is this thing oriented strand board. It is these panels. And let's replace them with something that is a drop-in replacement that works so well that a builder on a job site won't even know that the material's been swapped. Right. That's the bar we're trying to get.
What were the results?
Of course, nothing is, linear, but 4 years later, we've built the technology. We've stood up the supply chain. And 6 months ago, we got this order from D.R. Horton for 10 million panels. Now, 10 million panels is about 90,000 homes. In any given year, that could be 10 to 15% of all new homes in America.
Wow.
Just at that volume. And so we went through a lot of proof points to get to a place where there's high confidence in with a startup, it's not just high confidence in the material, high confidence in the product. It's high confidence in the team. It's high confidence in that entire verticalized supply chain that these guys can deliver. And this company is going to be solvent and be able to do this for the long haul.
And I'm imagining too, as the builders, you have to have confidence that this thing 5 years later doesn't fall apart.
Absolutely.
Right? You've got that whole extra complication before you order your next 10 million or 100 million panels, right?
That's right. And so my view, had we gone the route of a green builder building, 10 homes here, another building 20 homes there, I think we would have died by, a million little cuts, right? Because understandably, a lot of those builders would say, Josh, I'm aligned with you on the sustainability.
Sure.
But I can't take that risk, right? If something goes wrong in 5 years, I can't take that risk, right? That D.R. Horton, is just more strategic, right? When you get to the larger builders, they care about sustainability for sure. But the driver is, does this material meet my standards? Is this a domestic supply chain that gives me, that I see strategically, we're going to have access to supply. We're building so much, 1 out of every 7 homes.
Wow.
Right. Are there some other things about this technology that we feel like may give us a competitive advantage over time? And you start to build a tight, kind of very strategic relationship that gets past.
Was it also cheaper for them by chance, or no?
Where we're going to get to with this order is we will get to we can say price parity, we will get to the ability to control pricing, right? To be able to decide where in the market do we want to be. But the reason why we went forward with the business, because I've spent my 20 years building sustainable companies, and this notion of a green premium, that the product you should pay more just because it's green, is such a non-starter for me, right? Like if there's any business where that's the case, just don't do it, because you're selling to, a very, very small market, and we want to sell to big markets. And so we felt like the economics on the grass that we're growing beat trees. We know, like from a supply chain, from a logistics, from transportation, this can beat trees. And then we felt like this production technology we're building is modular. So we don't have to go build a $400 million factory and try and finance that. We can do it for a very, very small fraction of it and kind of stack these lines next to each other. We get to more flexibility in the supply chain. We take cost out of the supply chain. And so we looked at it, we said, this can win. This isn't just about trying to get into a big market. This can win on price. This can win on quality. And that doing those things enables us to satisfy our climate goals. But the climate goals only work if we actually nail those things and get them right from the beginning.
The unit economics have to work for it to be a scalable business, period, no matter what.
Period.
No matter what. Nice. Let's talk the fact that you went from a startup operator to a media builder, the Supercool shift. What sparked the idea of Supercool, and why did media feel like the right next kind of step after Planted? I mean, you're still in Planted, I'm guessing, but why do this now?
So I stepped down as CEO a little over a year ago. And when I started kind of casting around saying, what's next? There were three things that I would say trends that jumped out at me. One, I started seeing more technologies like Planted in this climate space that were further beyond Planted. We're already in market, scaling up market, commercializing. And then I went and looked at the data and saw that over the last, let's say, decade or so, 1,750 climate tech startups have raised Series B funding or beyond, right? That's a lot. Now, not all those companies, that still means there's going to be massive flame-offs and failures, but that means a lot of climate tech has commercialized. And you have these solutions in market that most people are unaware of. And then you look at the global investment landscape, and you see in 2024, $2 trillion invested into global clean energy.
Wow. Which
is historic, and $1 trillion invested in fossil fuels. So global clean energy investment doubles fossil fuel investment, right? And so you step back and say, well, the United States, we're going through some headwinds. We have an administration that's less in favor of clean energy. Okay, fine. That situation is probably not going to last forever. And of that $2 trillion invested in 2024, the US was 16%. Oh, wow. 84% overseas, right? So the US doesn't dictate what's going to happen in the world in terms of global clean energy investment.
That's rare.
Right?
In most things they do.
Right. But not in this. And then you have thousands and thousands of cities that have climate action plans that are actually turning cities into laboratories for change.
Yeah,
and you
Europe
put that
is
together,
big on that.
Massive. And so you put that together, and I felt like, you know what, we're in a moment where we're in a new era in terms of climate action that is underway, but underrepresented in the media landscape. People don't know. I think that's a massive opportunity. So Supercool tells those stories. We case study that innovation, and we try to package it in a way so that decision makers who are not sustainability people are looking and saying, well, I know I have to be a tech company today. Every company's a tech company, regardless of what I sell. We know you're going to have to be a climate company, in short order soon. We want to arm you with the best stuff out there, and this is it. So it's de-risked. You can take it to your CEO, and you're not going to get fired.
Wow. Josh, from a investment perspective, when you're running into interesting startups that are trying to solve this problem, I'm part of a couple of VC funds and also my angel networks. They're interested in investing in this world. Clean tech, age tech, all this stuff's interesting to us. And then from servicing perspective, Higher Cloud, the tech consulting and recruiting firm, we're all about supporting those businesses as well because we like mission-driven companies. So keep that in mind.
Awesome. Yeah, that's
lots of opportunities for us to help scale this awesome, very important thing, frankly, right? So that's good. How are you, how are you choosing the stories to feature, and how do you balance the technical depth and accessibility from a broader audience?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's an awesome question, because we think about that all the time. Particularly the depth question. For us, the filter is first and foremost, is this climate tech solution, is it beyond pilot? Is it scaling? Right? Is this available today? If I were in that industry, could I get it? Right. So there's an element of, is this a real world solution? The example I'll give you is, we just had this company on the show called Trove. If you go on, Patagonia.com or Steve Madden, Michael Kors, Albert, Arc'teryx, Canada Goose, you name it, like all these big brands in America. Today, there's a section on that site where it says like, hey, lightly worn or resale, right? So people are sending their used stuff back, and it's being, refurbished and being made available again for resale. There's a company that's the engine behind that, and that company is Trove, right? So in the circular economy, keeping these products, in circular reuse and out of the landfill has a massive carbon reduction impact. We feature a company like that people just aren't aware. We like the stuff that's the guts, what's behind the scenes, that's enabling kind of this new economy. But as far as like how deep we go, we don't go deep into the tech stack. What we're trying to do is get at, what is the core innovation? What is the superhero, really interesting power that enables this company to succeed, maybe where others have failed? Because getting into that core innovation, and then this kind of what makes you successful, maybe where others are less so, a lot of that is knowledge that is transferable across industries, right? So if I'm listening to this and I'm in retail, I'm like, oh, maybe I should call Trove. But if I'm in an adjacent industry, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting how they solve that reverse logistics challenge or something else. Maybe like that gives me a new way to think about this.
Sure.
And so that's really what we're trying to get at, is this level of like core innovation, business case study. How does this thing actually work? And we'll delve into the tech, but we just looked at rare earth magnet recycling and critical minerals. I don't need to know how like that gets like, the CEO says, hey, we figured out a way to pull these rare earth magnets and separate them from steel. That was really hard. I'm like, cool. That's all I actually
You've
really
got that
need to know.
figured out. Yeah.
Yeah. That's super cool. Let's hold it there, and let's dig into the business case.
How cool, man. It's all about commercializing these things, because if you can commercialize and again, make money from it, then it's scalable, right? So I like that. I didn't even know that existed with the worn clothes and all that stuff. They should incentivize it even more by paying for you to send it back.
Well, some of them do, but what was interesting when we were talking with this, the CEO, he was saying like Canada Goose. Canada Goose is now a luxury outdoor gear, winter jackets. He's having the conversation has advanced so far with some of these brands, in that what the brands are now considering is it's almost like buying or leasing a car, where they're like, or maybe like leasing a car. They're like, here's going to be the value of this like super awesome jacket, right? This like, imagine like a Prada jacket, right? Where you buy it and it's like, by the way, the resale price on this thing is like, you're buying it for $4,000. The resale price is $2,300. And like, that going in, right? And like, We'll authenticate it, right? All of that is reuse, and all of that enhances the value proposition for the consumer and for the retailer and for the planet. So yeah, there's some really novel, innovative things that are being done.
It's like GOAT, right? Because I never understood it. Wait, you're buying people's shoes, the sneaker game, right? It's a big thing. I mean, I didn't understand it when it first came out. Josh, what has surprised you the most about clean tech innovation space since starting the show? Like, what's the one thing you're like, oh, that's weird. It's opposite of what I would think, or anything?
Yeah, the one thing that has jumped out at me is how much climate tech companies are leaning into AI to drive some really fascinating solutions. I didn't know that was like baked,
applicable,
that was real. Years ago, I was at Duke University, and talking to their dean of engineering. And he was saying, hey, we want to start a program, start up around AI and students. Would you be interested in running this thing? And, and I was just like, I don't think that's real, man. I think, that sounds like sizzle, but not real. And so, we talked to this woman, Ritu Narayan. She runs a company called Zoom up in Silicon Valley, ZUM. Zoom is fixing school bus transportation. And what she said to me, she's like, Josh, she's like, your kids take the bus? And I'm like, I wish they'd take it more, but yeah, in theory, yeah, my kids take the school bus. She's like, okay, they're having the same experience on that school bus that your grandparents had, because school buses haven't changed in 80 years, right? And what that means is the transportation director of the school and the parents with their kids on the bus, nobody has any idea where the bus is, ever. And nobody knows. And it's like, how is that possible in the 21st century, right? So they come in, they bring a lot of tech, they delight parents, they delight school administrators, more oversight. They also bring in a suite of AI. And so what that does is it optimizes bus routes. So why is that important? Well, one, it makes it quicker to get to school. Kids get to school on time. That's a big problem in big school districts. Two, where Zoom is trying to go, they're trying to electrify school buses, right? So that's a big health issue. That's a big environmental issue. So the AI, because they optimize the school routes, they were able to go to the city of Oakland. This is the first city in the country to do this. They said, look, we're going to electrify all your school buses. We're going to give you brand new electric school buses. You currently have roughly around 140 old diesel buses, which you're running so inefficiently, like the rest of America, you actually only need 72. So we're going to go buy 72 buses because we just AI'd, the bus routes on the other ones, optimized and made everything so much more efficient. You don't need 140 buses. This is waste. This is poor utilization of assets. We're moving to a better, more electrified future, and AI had a role in that. And so I've seen numerous examples like that, and that has been really eye-opening for me.
Is Zoom in LA? Because I feel like I know one of their bus drivers because they wear a Zoom shirt. I thought they were just like a consulting EOR type of contracting firm where you outsource this driver function. But I guess they are, but they've also building some cool tech behind the scenes.
It's all of it. So it's from the driver, it's the bus, it's the route, it's the transparency and visibility into the system so that everybody knows where it is. Yeah, it's fascinating, fascinating company.
How cool. Making climate solutions cool is very important, right? Because otherwise people get bored. Again, it's just people fighting over it, and you're like, I don't even understand it to take a side. You've said adoption is everything. How do you get people to actually care? One, to be educated enough to care, especially in industries that don't naturally lead with sustainability. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think the way that you sell sustainability is you don't talk about sustainability ever. I was just talking to the CEO of a company called Wasteless. This will be an upcoming episode. And what they do is they do dynamic discounting in grocery stores, right? So they have some machine learning. And so they say, look, there's this expiration date coming in the future. And what grocery stores will do is they'll keep the price the same, and like on the last day, they try and drop it by like 40% and get the thing out the door, right? Mm-hmm. But like, it doesn't really work. And there's, food waste is, they say today about 8% of carbon emissions is just food waste.
Wow.
So it's insane. And grocery stores aren't the sole culprit. It's this whole value chain and supply chain, but they're a big piece of it. So Wasteless has this technology that just basically says, we're going to come in and from day one, you're going to be cash flow positive because we will kind of machine learn our way to know the optimal time to just lower that price a little, to move the product out the door so you capture as much profit as you possibly can. They're not going. So I said to him, who do you sell to when you go to like these big grocery stores? Who do you sell to? And he's like, it's the chief commercial officer. He's like, then we got to get IT on board, and then we got to get a few other, and he goes through the thing. And I was like, wow, what's so interesting, Oded, is that you didn't mention the sustainability people at all. And he's like, I know, because that's not how we're selling in, and that's not how we're making this happen. So my point is that the way to sell is kind of comes back to saying you just have to have a solution that works for your customer based on what your customer values, not based on your values about sustainability. Sometimes that's about making it cool. Very often that's about making that enabling, your customer to either make more money or save more money. And it's really, right? It's a capitalist society, and the climate tech solutions have to be able to help companies, have to be able to help the business bottom line. And if they do that, they stand a shot. The thing that's the hardest for any startup isn't like, is my solution better? Or is it going to save you money? It's overcoming mediocrity, right? It's overcoming whatever lousy way companies are operating today that they've gotten comfortable with. And so climate tech companies have all those challenges, plus they have to be able to really deliver on that, cost, profit, value proposition.
Well, you kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask you, like, what do you think clean tech often struggles with messaging, and what needs to change? And you basically answered it, is they struggle mostly because the messaging is clean tech, because they think this is what's going to make them stand out. But the concept is just talk about the business and how you could save this company money or make them money or whatever, and they will listen. And then this will be an added bonus.
Well, I was like so eager to like jump in and answer that.
Yeah, please.
Because we talk about it. We do talk about it all the time. And I was asking, so this was a little bit less B2B. We had the CEO of Sunrun, Mary Powell, on the show. Sunrun's the largest solar company in America, home solar company in America, and now the largest home battery installer in America. Right? And so I was asking her, like, how did you become the largest how did you get to these rates now where almost 70% of the people who buy solar panels from you are also installing like a Tesla battery or some battery in their home too, right? And she said, well, we stopped talking about the tech because no one really, early adopters care about the battery. Yes. Most people could care less, right? Yes. We don't talk about the tech. We don't talk about sustainability. All those things are important, but not up front. What's important up front is peace of mind, right? Extreme weather, the lights are going out. We're going to keep your lights on. We're going to sign up for a contract where you're going to have insight and clarity about what your bills are going to be, right? And as the prices are going up, you're going to have a hedge, right? We're going to, we know what you care about, homeowner, are the outcomes and the results. You want to control your costs. You want to have peace of mind that you're going to be safe and secure. That's what we talk about, right? We shift the conversation. Yep. And I think for climate tech companies or clean tech companies, one, they have the problem that every tech company has in the beginning is they talk about, they fall in love with their own tech. And their customers aren't falling in love with their own tech, right? The customers want to know what can the tech do for them. And then they fall in love with the climate mission, which is awesome and you have to keep it, but it's not what gets your product sold.
It's very, very smart. I think a lot of times any startup, forget climate change or anything, they get obsessed with their solution, their tech, like you said, and no one cares. They should fall in love with the problem, right? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Fall in love with that, because you can pivot your product, but you have to understand the real problem. That's really good. You're right, because a lot of times the feedback loop that they get, Josh, is fake. I feel like, right? Because if you come to me and you're telling me about this incredible climate tech and how it's going to save the world, and I have to nod and agree, right? Rarely will I say, Josh, if I could be honest, I don't care. I'm just trying to save money, man. And I would feel like a jerk, right? So then I have to, the feedback I give you, this is awesome. I'll let you know, but I can't afford it. The truth is, I don't understand it or care about it, right? Versus save you money, make it easier. I think we have an issue with electric cars now because everybody got really excited. Oh my God, electric cars, they're making them cool, they're making them fast. It's good for the world, but I'm saving money, I don't get gas. Now our assurances have gone up substantially. We have 2 electric cars. I don't even want to tell you what our assurance is for these cars. And so that's going to prevent someone to go back and get an electric. Now I want to go back to gas. And so these are all the things that I think that's the next issue that has to be solved. Otherwise, you're going to see a big drop off with electric cars. I have a lot of friends that are saying no more. They're going back to gas cars because of that. Because apparently you can't fix these cars. When you get in a big enough accident, they're salvaged. They're done. So it's very expensive for the insurance companies to replace them. So they got to get that money up front,
Yeah, and it's a very good point. We bought an electric car last year, and that sticker shock. And we also moved from North Carolina to South Carolina, and went to register the car or call for insurance, and I got quoted this exorbitant rate. And I thought, is that because we're in is that because we're in a different state? Like, what? How is that possible? So it's the EV
upwards
situation.
of $600 a month. I mean, it's
Wow.
insane. Yeah, it's ugly. It's got some other reasons, but yeah. Wow. Okay. Let's talk about rare earths infrastructure and coming clean tech boom. I mean, there's so much talk about these rare minerals in Ukraine and in the US. Something was, I don't know if you heard, but from Oregon to Nevada, there was some lithium, 1.5 billion or trillion worth of, stuff found that could be used for batteries in the US. Like, why do these things matter? Like, I hear it all the time and I never understand the battle. I know a little bit now, but tell me more.
Yeah, as we're learning too, there's what's interesting is, we think, okay, solve climate change, solar panels, wind turbines, whatever it's going to be, renewable energy, which is true. I mean, that's is what we have to roll out. But what we rarely understand, what I rarely understand, all of us, is, well, what does it take? Where are the bottlenecks, or what makes that work? And so, these critical minerals, right? You mentioned lithium, or there's critical rare earth elements. The challenge today is we do need those. That's what flows into motors. That's what flows into electric motors. The most critical and rarest of them all are the ones that are in, and not just like they're in wind turbines, they're in electric motors, but they're also in MRI machines. They're also in hard disk drives and data centers. These are these critical rare earth metals. So there's multiple challenges. One of the biggest is that China had a lot of foresight 2 decades ago and saw that the world was going to be moving to a more electrified world, and really locked up the supply chain, built strategic relationships with countries with a lot of resources, and built mining relationships, and built, of course, the manufacturing in China. Today, the controls for some of these critical rare earth minerals, upwards of 90% of the market. Wow. So in a world now where there's geopolitical tension, it's unstable, that puts the West, the US and our allies, we're exposed. There's some risk there. So not only do you need these minerals to help affect the clean energy transition, but now we're in this sort of geostrategic situation where access isn't as clear. And so one of the companies that we talked to recently was called Cyclic Materials. And what Cyclic did was they said, okay, look, China has the virgin supply, but everything that's gone into, it's all over here in America or in Europe, right? We have all this stuff, and the stuff could be an electric lawnmower. The stuff is like anything with like an EV battery in it, an electric motor, there's minerals in it. Let's do some urban mining. Instead of mining like a pit, let's go mine the city or where all that stuff is, and let's get those rare earth magnets out. Now that's really hard. And so they figured out a way to actually do that and have set up the infrastructure. So there's, it's just really novel. There's really cool solutions. And what's really interesting about the approach that's coming with Cyclic, when they do that and they get these magnets and they get the minerals out, they're actually super pure. They're the purest on earth because they're not have any of the pollutants or stuff that's actually in the virgin mine. And that's why companies like Amazon, Microsoft, BMW, Jaguar, they're like, oh yeah, we're all over that because this is really vital for our industries, our operations.
Wow. Josh, this is a weird concept because we're always talking about overpopulation, and we're talking about not enough homes and not enough cars and this and that. China in the next probably 50 years is as is dealing with the complete opposite issue. Their population is going to decline probably to half, 600-700 million from 1.4 billion. And all those cars, what's going to happen to them, right? Because they're going to have, billions of cars that aren't going to be used. I mean, the entire world's population is declining, but China is going to drop to half. Their homes, in the US, we had a huge surplus in 2000, I think 8 and 9, 5% surplus, huge, which caused the meltdown of the financial system. I don't know if you knew, it really sparked that. In China, it'll be 100% soon. So they're going to need half the homes they need. So how does that work? What happens to these homes? What happens to these cars? And is there a play there to take those materials and refurbish them, to reuse them? I don't know.
Yeah, you're raising a huge issue. And I think what we're seeing now is infrastructure coming into place that will be the scaled up recycling infrastructure,
Yep.
which will be critical. Right? We're seeing companies like Redwood Materials, which was started by a former Tesla executive, right? And actually put their like giga recycled battery factory very close to, I think, to the Tesla factory in Nevada, where they're building at scale the ability to capture those batteries and recycle them. You're seeing companies that have actually figured out how to just take those batteries and put them on the grid, give them a second life, right, as storage for renewables and solar. And so I do think as that problem takes root, the solutions will have an opportunity to continue to scale. I mean, we're seeing in Iowa where 70% of the state produces enough energy to run on 70% wind. That's a lot of wind turbines. And so some of the first wind turbine recycling companies are in Iowa, right? So I do think necessity drives innovation and creates opportunity. And I think that will continue.
Nice. Very nice. How can tech executives meaningfully, or any founder, entrepreneur, how can they meaningfully engage with climate innovation, especially if they're outside the space? When I mentioned a couple use cases for me is, as an investor, I could put my money where my mouth is. As a founder of HireCloud, I can make sure that part of our business development efforts and our workflow is going to support these type of companies. But what can people do?
One of the things I would say from a business standpoint is we're in a new moment around energy efficiency. Energy efficiency has always been kind of like the ugly stepchild, the thing that's like, yeah, it's like the medicine I know I should take, but like, really, like, when am I going to caulk my windows? Like, come on, man. Like, but again, with AI, with advanced technology, we see companies that have figured out with like HVAC, right? Like there's a company called Brainbox that's in now, 17,000 buildings. And the reason why in 5 years, and the reason why they've expanded so quickly is because if they have to put any hardware at all into your building, it's minimal. And sometimes they don't have to put anything, but they can, through the cloud, tap into a building's HVAC system, right? Now, HVAC for any building is 40 to 50% of all the energy in that building. And using AI, they can control that and make it extremely smart. So for example, they could say, well, okay, we're an office building. We know on this floor with 96% certainty who's going to be in this floor, the occupancy 6 hours from now. Mm-hmm. So let's either gradually raise the temperature or let's gradually cool the temperature.
Yep.
Let's do that when there's a little more renewables on the grid. Let's take a break if they're not there. Let's take a break if the cost spikes, right? And they can start to bring cost down by 25% and carbon down by 40%, right? Every building on earth should have that type of solution. Right? Yeah. You don't have to do anything to actually have the cost savings and the carbon reduction. And so I think the toolkit for nearly every business owner is dramatically shifting. The key is to understand what is out there. Obviously, Supercool is just a platform. We're bringing our view and our voice to this. But I think these solutions will become more readily known. Contractors will have them. People will be talking about them, and we're right on the cusp of this, this innovation, renaissance in terms of climate.
Wow, it's big stuff. If you could put one idea about climate change or innovation or leadership on a billboard that every person should see, what would it say?
Oh, what would it say? It would say climate. The time has come.
Time has come to do something, huh?
The time has come, baby. The low carbon future is here. That's what we say.
Brilliant. It's here. Josh, what's one of your favorite books? It doesn't have to be on this topic, but it could be.
Oh, man. Well, the one that's springing to mind is called Lamb. And Lamb is the I probably will. I'll probably butcher the tagline or the subtitle, but it's really like the story of Jesus Christ told through his childhood best friend Biff.
Wow.
And so it's the lost years of how does Jesus Christ actually like become Jesus Christ? Like how does he actually like
wow
figure out his powers and figure out how to
LAM
LAMB.
Lamb. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now it's a little bit of satire, so you have to kind of like be open to the humor behind it. But it is a fascinating story.
This is, usually when I ask this question, Josh, I mean, it's the same classic 5, 10, 20 books, right? This is definitely unique. So we will absolutely check it out. That's really cool. Thank you so much for being here, Josh. We've learned a ton. Guys, Josh is showing us what is possible when optimism meets action. That's the key. If you want to reframe how you think about climate solutions innovation, follow Josh's work at getsuper.cool and tune into Supercool podcast and definitely listen to this episode. Thank you so much for being here, Josh. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful conversation.
Keep doing a great work, brother.
Appreciate it.
And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avetis Antaplyan, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.